Hello, I've just been told I was muted and I will go over my routine again. So, hello everybody, how is it going? I hope you can hear me loud and clear now. If somebody can just confirm that you can hear me, I can get this monkey up my back and we can move on. So, in the meantime, I'll keep talking. There is, since a 20-second delay in the message you send to the time I receive, which is lead time, right? The concept we've learned in inventory of AS. In any case, welcome to the first of the sessions for this exam period. And what I'm going to do today is obviously I want to get into it straight away. Don't want to waste anybody's time. So I'll lay out the plan, what the agenda is. And what I've decided to do is I'll have two of these sessions for sure and dedicate today's session only for paper 3 because I realize that they're two pretty heavy papers within their own rights and it'll be unfair for me to squeeze them into one session, so they deserve a session of their own. Therefore, today's session will be my way of approaching paper 3. So I will pretend to be the student, which is you, so which will be me today, and I'll show you if I were faced with this paper, and I've randomly picked one today. How would I go about it? What are the things that I need to know? What are the things that I need to keep in mind when writing my 8-mark answers, when I'm writing my 12-mark answers? What do I do with the calculations? Remember, this is a pretty long paper. You're required to answer 5 questions in 1 hour 45 minutes. And trust me, you would ideally want more time because there is so much to write. If you've done your syllabus well, then you will find that your mind is racing around with so many thoughts that there's just not enough time to put them on paper. So you have to be clever with the way you approach your answers, which obviously starts by understanding what each question requires from you. And I must also say that it's not something that you just maybe watch in a video once and then it will just magically appear for you at the day of the exam. It comes with practice. I've been doing this for years, so now I'm able to do it. You'll have to squeeze those years into months and weeks. So a lot of practice would be required, but there is still enough time for you to make use of it. And hopefully it helps you to improve your grades. So let's get into it. I want to start right away. And the paper I have for you today is, and I'll write it down here, this is one of the latest papers. So November 2025, the last session that is just passed, and this is paper 3-2. So the second variant of it, that's the one that we are looking at today. Okay, now if there are any questions in the middle, I would request that you type it up in the chat window, and as soon as I get the opportunity to address it, I will do it. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, when you see your paper 3, it will look like this. Okay, of course, there's an opening page, but this is where all the meat of the case study is. So first things first, what are you looking at? You're looking at only one business in question. Unlike paper 2, paper 3 only has one case study, and one case study will test your knowledge on everything about a business. And what I mean by that is that you will be tested on all 5 units equally. So unit 1, business and environment, will be tested. Marketing, HR, operations, finance. Expect a question from each unit, which means you leave nothing to chance. You just have to prepare for everything, which you should anyways, right? Now, things, then obviously we'll get into the details of the insert in a minute. Along with the insert, you will also get a question paper, which will have 5 questions. So I've got them all lined up here. You can see question 1 and 2, which are similar in terms of their marks, which are 8. Then you get a couple of calculation questions, then a 12 marker question number 5 to end it. So that is the task that you have at hand. I've just been corrected. This is paper 31. That's right. Sorry, this is paper 31. I'll correct myself. So this is what you'll have to look at, right? Now, what I recommend is that you, before you begin, just look at all the questions and identify what sort of concept is being tested. And I mean, don't go into in details of structuring your answer. Just look at it briefly as to what the examiner is looking for. And the reason for doing that is that when you're reading through the case study, which you'll have to do it once fully, you will know exactly the things to underline and make note of, because you will know what the questions are about. So always read, just quickly glance through the questions and then look at the insert. Okay, now in the interest of time and to make sure that I'm able to do things well, I will not be answering all 5 questions because they are kind of repetitive. So I'll be answering one of the 8-mark questions, because you get two of them and they both have the same process of answering them. I'll be answering one of the calculation questions, which are worth 4 marks, and there are 2 of those in your paper. And I'll be answering one of the 12-mark answers, which you will get 3 of in your question paper. So in total, you're answering for 60 marks, 2 8-mark questions, 2 4-mark calculation questions, and 3 12-mark essay answers. Right, so what I will show you now are the questions that I have picked to do for you guys today. And the first question in it, which is from the first unit, business and its environment, you can clearly see that the question is about external influences. So the question is, analyze 2 likely impacts on PPP of the changing external influences. So anywhere in the case study that we see any mention of external influences, we know that we've got to make a note of it. Okay, so that's the first question that I'll be doing. Then of course we'll skip the second one. It's similar to the first one, so we will skip that. And then we'll do question number 3, which is first a 4-mark calculation split into 2 2-mark questions. Clearly this is from investment appraisal. Here they're asking you to calculate payback period. Then they ask you to calculate ARR, and like all investment appraisal questions, you will be asked to then recommend whether to go ahead with the investment or not. And that's the 12 marker that we'll be attempting today. Should we invest in this new machine, based on both the quantitative side of things, which is the investment appraisal, and the qualitative side of things. So that's the scope of our work today. Hello Warrior. Warrior, perhaps not every day, but I will make this more and more frequent. I will admit that during Ramzan the scheduling becomes a little bit more challenging, but as we are getting towards the end of that, I'm sure with more time on my hands I'll be able to do more at a better time in the day. So there will be more for sure. Okay, so 3 questions, right? First, we're looking at any clues on external influences. Then we're looking at investment appraisal table with numbers and cash flows. And then we're looking at the decision to whether to buy the machine or not. That's what we're doing. Now, one more thing that I would like to just highlight is that each question, 8 to 12 mark, right? I'll give you an example here. We're not doing this one just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to say. Here's a question of 12 marks which says evaluate the usefulness to PPP of elasticity measures. So keep the word elasticity in your minds when deciding on the marketing mix for the new cheese pies in export markets. So what we see here, that clearly the question is asking about elasticity's role in developing your marketing mix. And your case study, when you go to the insert, you will see that it is divided into different paragraphs, and each paragraph has a particular heading to it. So if I can just zoom in here, you see first one being growth, second one being external influences, which we'll be using today, then marketing, and then you see here elasticity, right? So what I'm trying to show to you is that if you can identify what the question is asking in terms of concept, you will see that the examiner has given you a clue in the past paper, in the insert, that here's the heading, here is where you find the elasticity concept, and this is where you will find all the application you need for a question on elasticity. I hope I got that right. Similarly, the question that we'll be attempting on external influences, there you see the heading of external influences. So, that's where my application points are going to be. That's what I need to discuss in my answer. And when we're looking for whether to buy the machine or not, remember, this is machinery is part of innovation, and that's where the clue here is innovation. Another clue is that you're given all these forecast net cash flows, which is what you need to conduct your investment appraisal, right? So each heading is giving you a clue that this is where you find the application content for a particular answer. So just make sure you are able to relate that and find the right application. Okay, now since we know that we're looking for external influences today and innovation, I'm going to now get to the start of the case study. Okay, now here's where I'm going to give you another nice little tip. This is something that I do every time. That there are 4 pieces of information that as soon as you find them in the case study, you highlight it, you make a note of it, because after getting a hang of those 4 pieces of information, what happens is that, at least for me, it really opens up the case study. My understanding of it, triples, maybe even quadruples. So maybe it will help you too. I'm sure it will actually. So the first thing that you got to do, I got to change my, that's too thick. Okay, there you go. So the first thing is, as soon as you are able to identify what kind of a business structure they have. So for example, if it's a private limited, public limited, partnership, social enterprise, what it tells you is that who makes the decisions. Are there many people? Are there few? Is there only one decision maker? So, speed of decision making can be discussed that way. Plus, the structure also tells you where the money is coming from. So if it's a public limited, selling shares, private limited, sell shares but privately, partnership, maybe go to a bank. So structure tells you a lot about a business. Number 2, what product they're selling. Okay, this gives you a laser focus about the kind of marketing, the kind of innovation that you got to bring. So always look at the kind of product that they're making. Number 3 is the business B2B or B2C or both. So the distribution channel of it. And perhaps the most important one is the objective. Okay, if the objective isn't given, then you will find that a mission might be given. And every time you evaluate your answer, the 12 markers, you make a reference to the objective, that we have to do things that is in line with the objective, not go, off some other tangent. So these 4 pieces of information crucial for understanding what's really happening in the case study. And as I see them, I will highlight them as well in my paper, in our paper right now. So let's get into it. Like I said, the way to do this is look at the questions first, identify what you have to look for in the case study, and you give one full time reading over the entire case. Okay, go over it once fully, because you don't want to be missing out on points that you could have included in an answer and you thought, oh, maybe I didn't read it earlier, so you may lose some marks there. So read it once fully and then approach the answers. So that's what I'm going to do today. So this one's called Pedro's Perfect Pies and PPP. So Pedro left school without any formal qualifications. Well, that's not a very good way to motivate students to stay in school, right? But in any case, maybe this will lead to somewhere. So let's see. Pedro was given the opportunity to work in a pie factory. This was owned by an entrepreneur who wanted to help unqualified young people. So there are some nice people out there, right? So Pedro found a home in a pie factory. Pedro spent 6 years working at the factory, and that's a decent enough time. He was quickly promoted because he was conscientious and shows initiative. So, you're going to have some skills if you didn't stay in school for long, and he was able to develop them. So he wanted to be somebody, that's what they're saying, and he showed initiative, so he moved forward. He didn't just wait for things to be given to him. When the business owner retired, she offered Pedro the chance to buy the business. Oh, lucky break, huh? And Pedro raised capital from his savings, friends and families, and bought the business. So, this is what you got to do. Meaning money has to come from somewhere. So he got everybody together and he bought the business. And then comes the major first piece of information, the business structure. PPP became a private limited company with Pedro as managing director. PPP is based in country A. So we know the structure now. It's a private limited company. So the friends and family and Pedro, they are the shareholders in the company, and few decision makers, but limited finance would be available to them. Okay. Now PPP manufactures a wide range of pies in its factory. The pies are sold to retailers in country A and other countries in the region. So here's another clue for us that the pies are sold to retailers, which makes this business B2B. Then the retailers then sell to the consumers, right? So there's clearly a difference there. That's what we know about the setting up of the business. Okay. Then let's move on to the part about growth. Even though we probably won't need to address this directly for our questions, but there might be information here that we can use in our answers to make it better. Remember, the examiner wants you to really fill up your answer with application. Just answers need to be everything about the business, nothing else. Just probe, go deeper, and find other part from the case study that you can include that application in your answer. So do that as much as you can. Right. So growth. Now, PPP has grown steadily over the last few years. Its revenue and profits have increased by an average of 8% per year. That's a pretty decent growth rate. Production capacity has been increased to keep up with demand. So, perhaps this is showing that, they see that this is a growing market, and because of that, they are investing every time in increasing their capacity. The growth has been financed by retained earnings and bank loans, right? So here's their first taste of external source of finance. And recent accounting data is shown in table 1.1. So their revenue for the year 2024 was 15 million. They saved about $900,000 as the operating profit. They obviously took some loans, so that's $6 million in terms of loan, and they currently stand at a gearing percentage of 45. Okay, now this is a pretty okay gearing rate. Remember, your target for gearing is 50%. So if you're there or thereabouts, you're okay. That means, you can still go for a little bit more loan. And clearly here they are below the 50 target. They can actually afford to take more loans. That's what this data is telling us. All right. Now, external influences. Now, this is what we need for our answers. Remember, the question was explain two impacts on PPP of changes in the external influences. So we are going to look for what are the changes that are occurring for PP in the external environment. So real incomes, so that means income minus the inflation, so what the people really take home, in country A and other countries in the region have been falling due to high inflation and low economic growth. So there's the first impact, right? We see that the first problem is high inflation and low economic growth. Now we understand that whenever there's inflation and low economic growth, people look to save, and income elasticity of demand tells us that you spend less on your luxuries and you actually start spending more on the inferior goods. So that's an argument that we'll be able to make in our answers. Okay. I'm going to go to that answer in a minute. The trade between country A and other countries in the region has become more difficult due to country A leaving an international trade agreement. Now, here's another problem. Country A, where PPP is, they left a trade agreement, which means that they will have to pay tariffs whenever they export, and whenever they import, their things will be more expensive for PPP. So imports become more expensive, exports become obviously less because you are more expensive for the rest of the world. So another problem there. Plus, the third problem is that consumers are changing their eating habits, and many people are eating less meat. So a social change is occurring here where people are becoming more and more conscious in what they eat, and they want to eat less meaty pies. I guess that's where you can do some other types of things, vegan and things like that. And that's what the marketing part of this case study will tell us. So let's get into it. Now, when Pedro bought the business, he identified an opportunity to develop a premium product. Pedro asked the marketing team to carry out market research. The results of this established that there was a market for high quality, high priced pies. Pedro discussed this new product development with all of his marketing team because he valued their opinion. So something that I'll take out from here is that he's someone who values what the team says. So he's a good leader. Once the premium pies were launched, PPP branded its product as either classic or premium pies. So there's two classes of pies now. Most pies PPP produces still contain meat, and this is the problem, right? People don't want to eat meat, and PPP's pies contain meat in it. However, a newly developed premium no meat vegan pie has started to sell very well. So here's a solution for them, right? They've got a premium no meat vegan pie, which might be the solution in a country where people are looking to eat less meat. See, so that's what I mean. There are different pieces of information all over the case study that you can combine together to form a really good answer. And I'm going to use this one, that people are eating less meat. Plus, they also have a solution on the way of a premium non-meat vegan pie. So, a good way to combine your application points. PPP is also planning to launch a new classic pie with the cheese filling, especially for the export market. There you go. So, there's a cheese filling one that is also now available, but they're thinking for this in the export market. However, the consumers that were eating less meat were in country A. So, I'll be choosy about how to use this point. Okay. Actually, I think I want to now go to start developing the first answer, right? I think I've got enough content here to really at least develop the first paragraph of it really well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this point here that consumers are changing their eating habits, where many are eating less meat, and the fact that they have a premium no meat pie which is doing really well. Okay, so where is that question? Here it is, 8-mark question. Okay, now what you've got to do first is, as soon as you see the question, pause for a minute. Okay, don't jump into it straight away. Have a little 1 minute to 2 minute brainstorming session and think about what you're going to write. And that comes with first knowing what you have to write, which is what is the examiner actually looking for in an 8-mark question. So an 8-mark question, they're looking for 2 points, as the question says, analyze 2. So up on the top right of my screen, if you can focus there for a minute, if they're looking for 2 points, that means I need 2 paragraphs. And since this is an 8-mark question where 2 marks are for knowledge, 2 are for application, and 4 for analysis, what they're looking for are 2 paragraphs, each with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of application, and developed analysis. So that formula that you see there is actually the format of your answer, that I need to have 1 paragraph that has all of this, and then do the same thing for the second paragraph. So 2 of such looking paragraphs is what you need. That's what the examiner is looking for. And this is sort of like what I also recommend here is that each paragraph is as easy as 1, 2, 3, right? That's the trick that I have in my mind. And when I say 1, 2, 3, what that means is have 1 line of knowledge, clear, factual, that this is what happens when, changes occur. So the knowledge point, explain application over at least 2 statements, and have 3 layers in your analysis. Okay, this is a sequence that the examiner is looking for. It is there in the marking scheme for you to see, where you see, developed analysis written, you'll see AN1 and AN2. That's what the examiner is saying, that I need to see these 6 layers. And it doesn't necessarily mean they need to be 6 different sentences. It's just you need to show that one thing leading to another, another, then another, and over a period of 6 arguments, you're able to show what happens to a business. Okay, I'll show you how to do this. Now, I know that this is my format. Next, what you must do is divide the question into knowledge, application, and analysis. What that means is that each word is telling you this is what the question is looking for in terms of knowledge. This word will is telling you this is application, this is analysis. Now, how do you do that? The way to identify knowledge is that look for that word or those words that you can define in a single line business definition. Okay, and when I look at this question, which is analyze 2 likely impacts on PP of the changing external influences. The only concept that appears here is external influences. So as long as I talk about external influences in my answer throughout it, I will get my marks for knowledge, and there are 2 marks for that, and that's the first 2 lines of each paragraph. Okay, now you can write the definition, and if the definition is there, it will maximum get you 1 mark. But to get 2 full marks, you need to make sure that each paragraph starts with the right knowledge point. Okay, I'll show you how to do it. So I've identified my knowledge from the question. Then application. Application will be something happening, something changing, something occurring for the business. And I can see that there is something happening to the PP in terms of there is changing external influences. So any changes that are happening in the external influences, as we've identified when we were reading the case study, any discussion of those will mean that you have talked about the right application point. So you look for that paragraph where external influences are, then you look for the changes that the examiner has given to you. And then comes the part about analysis. And that's easy. They're asking for analysis either positive or negative, and they're asking about 2 likely impacts. So what the recommendation is, you should have 1 positive and 1 negative if possible. But in this question, all the things are happening, obviously, that situation is getting worse for PPP. Therefore, I think we're only going to see negative points of discussion here, because incomes are going down. Other countries' trade agreement has obviously cancelled, and less people eating pies. So there's going to be 2 negative points that I'm going to discuss here. So that's what the question is asking for. So Mariam, as I was saying, that it depends on what the change is in the case study. As we will see in the case study that all the changes are negative, so we are forced to discuss both negative. But if you can find a negative and a positive one, then you should have 1 of each. Okay. Now I'll start to develop my answer. Okay, what I will do is, if you could just give me a moment to set this up, because I did this yesterday and I thought that if I'm typing, it is much faster. So what I'll do is I will type again tonight. Yeah, there you go. Come on. Can you see? Yeah, you can see. All right. So, like I said, you can start with the definition. I will put 1 here, but it will only get you 1 mark. We need to obviously get the other things right as well. So, external influences. Obviously, the thing that you've identified as knowledge is what you explain here. Are the forces outside the business which are constantly putting pressure on it, such as social, economic, and legal. So just mention a few, and that if you do that, that's enough for 1 mark. But we don't want 1 mark, we want both the knowledge marks, right? So what I will do now is, and you don't need to change paragraphs, continue with it as you are. So one of the changes PPP is experiencing is a social change, right? And again, let me just show you what I'm referring to here. I'm going to refer to these 2 points here, that many people are eating less meat. Most of their products contain meat. However, they're developing a new vegan pie and a cheese filling pie. Okay, so this is what I'm going to use to develop my point here. Where to go? Here you go. Right. So so this is where now I'm social change, as more people are choosing to eat less meat, right? So this is the knowledge part. This is when I'm saying the social change. I've identified the right concept from external influences. It was a social change, and now I've just smartly inserted my starting off application that people are eating less pie. Now I will also say this, and this is very, very important, that just rewriting things from the case study into your answer does not qualify as application. Okay, now even though I've written that people are choosing to eat less meat, just rewriting it is no good. Rephrase it, explain it, go into detail. Don't just copy it down. That's what I mean. Okay, so people are eating less meat. This is a concern because most of the pies produced contain meat in it. If the, now I'm still explaining application. If the trend continues, obviously if people go away from eating pies, what it means is that less demand will be there for PPP's product. They will obviously have to see a reduction in their revenue. And we saw earlier that they made a revenue of, I think, 15 million, right? Use those numbers. The more numbers you use, the better your application becomes. So this is a concern because most of the pies produced contain meat in it. If the trend continues, what happened there? PPP will see a fall in the demand for its pies. This will reduce the revenue from the 15 million earned last year. And again, the impact of this, however, it's also giving them an opportunity here, right? So, however, I'll bring that here. However, this will also present an opportunity for them to promote more of their new no meat vegan pies to balance out their profitability. That's enough, right? And I'll break this down, right? So where was my knowledge point here? I'll show you. This is where my knowledge was, that PPP is experiencing a social change as more and more people are choosing to eat less meat. Then I use this to develop my application, that since most of the pies contain meat in it, this is going to lead to a fall in demand for the pies. Then comes my analysis, that this reduces their revenue from last year, but it also opens up an opportunity as they can now sell their no meat pies. So once you do that from top to bottom, from here to here, that's worth 4 marks. You need to do the same thing again for another paragraph. So my knowledge, my application, and my analysis. That's the trick you need. Okay, and this is the way that you also attempt your 12 marker. The only difference is that you also add a bit of evaluation to it, but the structure remains the same. How are we doing, everybody? Are we okay? I'll take questions at this point if you have any. All right, if you do, just type them up in the chat window. I'm going to go to the case study again to look for another point of discussion, right? Remember, we're looking for external influences, anything that's changing and its impact on PPP who sells pies. So we know that high inflation, low in economic growth, that's a problem. Trade between country A and other country in the region has become more difficult due to country A leaving an international trade agreement. Right now, this is interesting because trade agreement means that it'll become more difficult to export. And here's a point, if you can see, a new classic pie with a cheese filling especially for the export market. So here's another problem that we can see appearing, that it becomes more difficult to export because without the trade agreement, it means that the foreign country will have to pay more tariffs and more duties for PPP's product, which means that all the work that the marketing team has done to come up with this new classic cheese filling pie, that might go to waste, or not entirely waste, but at least you won't see the same level of sales as you were expecting to see. So I think that's a beautiful point there waiting for me to be plucked and turned into a paragraph. So let's go and do it. Okay, so what I'll do again is remind myself that it needs a bit of knowledge, bit of application, bit of analysis. Let me just move this up here. And come on, sorry, 1 second, guys. Can I just move this up because it just becomes that much easier for me to type. Yeah, so next paragraph. Another change in the external environment is the ending of trade agreement with other countries. Okay, now explain what that means. You have to show your knowledge first, right? So this would make exports more expensive as local products would face added duties in other countries, right? So just explaining what this means, that trade agreements have ended. It means that whenever you have to sell your product to the countries, it becomes more expensive, right? Now I'm going to bring my application here, which was since country A, which is where PPP operates, has ended trade agreement, PPP will also see their product become more expensive in the international market. Okay, so just now you have to explain your application. Don't just throw it in there. Like I said, don't copy it. Explain what's happening. So it makes them more expensive. What else? What was I thinking? It makes them more expensive, right? So international expensive. This would make it. Sorry, let me just move this up. This will make it difficult for them to sell the newly developed cheese filled pies in the international market, and would make less revenue than projected. Okay, so less revenue and as a result, the money spent on product development would become a sunk cost. Right, so it's kind of going to waste in a way. Full stop. Once again, let me just break it down. Where is my knowledge? My knowledge is here. Exports become more expensive in other countries. How is this impacting PPP? Well, they operate in country A, which is where they have ended the agreement. PPP also see their product become more expensive in the international market. What is the impact? The analysis is this will make it difficult for them to sell the cheese filled pie in the international market. Less revenue, and the money that they spent on product development would be going to waste. So 3 clear layers again. My knowledge, application analysis. Combine those, you've got another 4 marks. Right? Doing this would mean that you are forcing the examiner to consider giving you full marks. Okay, you've given them everything they were asked for. They have no reason to not give you full marks. So that's what you need for an 8-mark answer. And again, just full of application, as much information as you can find from the case study, use more and more of it. And yeah, the sequence of things, one thing leads to another, 6-layered proper answer. Questions? Oh, there are 1 or 2. Oh, I was kind of caught up in that case study. So can you explain the paper 1 detail of paper 3 and paper 4? Yeah, so Anya, that's what I'm doing step by step. If you keep watching the stream, you'll see paper 3 today, and next week, same time, I'm doing paper 4. Okay. Would PDF be available? Yeah, we can make it available. No problem. Is this Cambridge? Yeah, this is Cambridge. This is CAIE. Hello, how are you? Sir, can you do accounting? A little bit. I can do a little bit, but I'm not an expert in accounting. Certainly not A-level accounting. If it's business, or the accounting that's involved in business, I can surely help you with that. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, now the next question that I'm doing today is a 4-mark calculation question, right? And we identified that to be of payback period and ARR, which means it's a question about investment appraisal. Okay, now we did get through half of the case study. I want to read through the next half so that we can find this piece of information in there. So I'm going back to my insert. And so far what we've read, if I could just summarize for you, is that Pedro left school, he worked for a pie factory, he got an opportunity to buy it, he bought it with his friends and family, he now sells to retailers, the business has grown, so has his capacity, he took a few loans. Now the external environment is not very helpful. We've just discussed that. Marketing team spends a lot of money in product development, and they're coming up with a solution for the meat pies through vegan pie and cheese filling one. Okay, so that's what we know. Let's see what else we have here. So next up is a discussion on elasticity. Now, due to higher production costs, PP has increased its prices, right? So if you don't increase your prices, you don't make the revenue. If you don't make the revenue, you don't make the profit. So they are forced to increase their prices. Pedro has analyzed some elasticity data for one type of classic pie and one type of premium pie, see table 1.2. And that's where you will turn over the page and you will get to the data here in table 1.2 for elasticity. And this is the question they'll be asking you to answer. So this is monthly sales after price increase. So they're asking you to calculate revenue here. You use the PED formula, you take revenue as X and you'll solve for it. So we're not doing that today. Hopefully you guys are okay with PED. I will move on and let's see what kind of human resource structure they have. Obviously, I don't expect to see investment appraisal here because it's purely a finance question, but we want to see what's happening in the case study. So Pedro has always been a self-confident innovator, both in terms of new product ideas and the way that PPP is organized and led. He is known for his social skills and is respected and trusted by his employees. So I could ask a question here that will test your AS knowledge, or I could just tell you the answer. But if you see a leader here, who has good social skills, respected, trusted by his employees, hopefully you will recall that this type of leadership is what we call paternalistic, right? Where the leader sort of becomes a father figure and everybody trusts in his judgment and his abilities. So that's the status that Pedro has achieved. Now, Pedro is keen on helping young unemployed people in the same way as he was helped. And that's very nice. Pedro, good on you. So clearly he has a social angle to the things that he's doing. PPP offers training apprenticeships in all areas of the factory. So they offer training that is good. It attracts the best workers. It also makes them sharper, better, more efficient. Trainees attend local colleges 1 day each week and are supervised by the department manager. So he goes above and beyond, and he has his people attend colleges. So really good leadership that brings obviously motivation into play, better output, better work, better pies, happy customers, right? Pedro thinks employees are PPP's greatest assets. As well as training apprentices, he offers competitive wages, and all employees have opportunities for career development and promotion within PPP. So, some good work, competitive wages, opportunities for career development and promotion. So, who wouldn't want to work there, right? Pedro is also socially aware as he rewards employees for good ideas from weekly Kaizen group discussions. Many employees have been with the company for more than 5 years. So, what I'm seeing here is that he rewards employees, and that's why they want to stay with the company for a long period of time. So, um, this all of this combined is telling you that this PPP and Pedro particularly, they practice soft HRM, right? Soft HRM is where there are three words in there that tell the whole story, right? Three words are PPP's greatest assets. So when they call the employees their greatest assets, that means that they are practicing soft HRM, something you would have seen in HRM strategy. So they reward them, they let them flourish, they give them training, motivation, all the things. So good things happening there. And again, there would be a question on HR where you would use this information. But our question that we are attempting today is the calculation is about investment appraisal. And we can clearly see that you will find that wherever forecasted net cash flows are, and that's given here. So let's read this. Let me zoom in. Ooh, whoa. Excuse me. So PPP's current production process is labor intensive, and pies are produced using batch production. So I want to start making note of these things. So labor intensive, batch production. All employees accept responsibility for product quality and are trained in quality assurance methods. So as we know what quality assurance is that each employee is tasked with checking the quality of product at each stage of production. So that's good for morale, that's good for motivation, it's worker participation, so motivation is high. I'm just going to write that down somewhere because they seem to be giving that hint a lot, that they have a happy workforce. Pedro is considering investing in a new computer-controlled pie making machines. See table 1.3. So we're given 1.3 here, where you're given net cash flows. Year 0 is the year of investment, then 4 years returns. We're given annual profit, average investment. So we'll use that information for the calculation questions, but let's read through this first. So now the interesting thing here is that there's a complete switch in the mood. They're going for a new computer controlled. So they used to be labor intensive and they used to keep workers happy. Now they're thinking, well, we're going another way. Now, there's two ways to look at this. One way is that, oh, that's horrible. They're going to replace people with machines. And that happens, right? That's redundancy. But you look at it from a business's perspective, and the business is doing it because it's the right thing to do. Because computer control means consistent quality, higher output, 24/7 production. Don't have to give them holidays, promotions, and such things. So they're looking at efficiency. And that's what they tell us, right? That this would increase production capacity in the factory. So they're doing that to increase production capacity. And we've seen in the past that each year demand has grown. Therefore, why not increase capacity, right? Now, factory employees would still need to complete the production process by adding the PPP pastry logo to the pies. Now, that's a big letdown, right? If you're a worker who was asked to do Kaizen, who was asked to check every piece of production, where you were asked to perform quality checks. Now, all you are asked to do is simply put a logo. I don't think this is something that makes workers very happy. So where the motivation was high earlier, this is a low motivation moment for them. Okay. Then we're given some financial data here, and we end the case study with this, that Pedro is undecided about increasing the use of machinery, especially as PPP will have to borrow the finance to purchase it. So here's one more catch, that in order to expand they will need to borrow. And this is where earlier on in the case study they had given us gearing here, right? Gearing was at 45%, so they could still afford to borrow. I'm going to use that information as well later on. Okay, so this is what we know about this. Table 1.3 is where we need to look at, and this is where the question, let me just show you the question. This is the question, that using the data in table 1.3, calculate payback period for PPP's proposed new machine. Okay, now the way to calculate payback period is that you obviously you'll do this in your answer sheets. I'll just do that here. And what you do is that you do a simple process of cumulative frequency. Okay, so let me just make these really crooked lines, right? And I'm looking at cumulative cash flows. Okay, what that obviously you'll remember those from your days of statistics, and I'll show you how it's done. That in year 0 is where you invest the machine, and that's where, since the amount you invested is 1.9, that's the negative amount that you are starting with, 1.9 minus. Okay, then the first year comes around, and the first year you make $500,000. So minus 1.9 plus 0.5 means that after the first year has gone, you're still 1.4 in the hole, which means it will take you all of year 1 and you still won't have recovered all the money. Then comes year 2, where you make 0.6. So you add that to minus 1.4. And minus 1.4 plus 0.6 means that the end of year 2, you're still left with 0.8. So it'll take all of year 2. Then year 3, you add that to minus 0.8, minus 0.8 plus 0.8, which means that at the end of year 3, you're going to get all the money that you've invested into the project recovered. So the payback period would be 3 years. Okay, simple as that. I hope my math was right. Yeah. So easy peasy. I'm going to move on to the next calculation question, which is using the data in table 1.3, calculate accounting rate of return for proposed new machine. Okay, now again I'll go to the table here, and unfortunately I have to erase this, so sorry guys. All right, now there are 4 steps in calculating ARR. First thing you got to do, and I'm going to do step 1 here. So this is where I'm doing the steps. Step 1 is where you add all the positives, and those are year 1 number, year 2, year 3, and year 4. Okay, we don't need average annual profit. We're just looking at the yearly cash flows. So 0.5 plus 0.6 plus 0.8 plus 0.8. So how much is that? 1.6, 1.6, 2.2. So this becomes 2.7 million. So 2.7 is what they're earning. Then the second step is you deduct the original investment amount. So 2.7 minus 1.9. And this leaves you with 0.8. Okay. Now the third step is that you divide it by the number of useful years, which is the last year of data, year 4. So 0.8 divided by 4 gives you 0.2. This is what you call your annual profit. Okay. Now, what I've just realized is that they've already given it to you. Anyway, so I've told you how it's done. In case if the question comes where annual profit wasn't given, this is how you will calculate it. Now, the fourth step, which would have been the only step to do in this question, would be to calculate ARR. And the formula for ARR is annual profit divided by average investment into 100. Okay. Now, the other piece of information is also given here. So, this simply becomes 0.2 divided by 0.95 into 100. Let me just quickly calculate that. 0.2 divided by 0.95 into 100. So the answer is 21.05. So 21.05%. Okay, that is your ARR number. Can you guys see that behind my face on the screen? Oh, hold on. There you go. So that's all you had to do, really. Pick these two numbers, average annual profit divided by average investment into 100. Just remember the denominator is average investment, not original investment. Okay, that's the new way to calculate ARR. Right, so we've got both our answers here. One was 3 years and this was 21.05%. So I'm just going to write them down. So 3 years and this was 21.05%. Okay, now as promised, I would also attempt now a 12 marker, and since we've just calculated this, I decided I will use the 12 marker for the same question. So we're looking at question 3 part C, and the question is evaluate whether PPP should invest in the new machine. Okay, so simple question here. Now here's something that you must remember for all of the 12 mark answers which are connected to a calculation. So we've just done 2 calculations, payback period and ARR, and we're seeing it's part C, so a question that's linked with that. And what the examiner is looking for is 2 things. And your answer must be a combination of quantitative and qualitative factors. Okay, now what does that mean? That means that you must use the calculations that you've calculated in part A and B in your answer, and you must use information that you find in the paragraph, so words and other things, and your judgment should always consider both the positives and negatives of both sides. And since our calculation part was all about investment appraisal, you'll have to discuss all of them. Okay, and just to recall that investment appraisal is incomplete without NPV. In fact, without NPV you can't make any decisions. So that's something that I will definitely bring in as evaluation, that yes, we have payback period, yes, we have ARR, but we should also calculate NPV, and in order to calculate NPV we would have needed discount factors, and those aren't given. So there's incomplete information to fully say that this is financially viable. So that argument must be brought in there. So I'm going to do that first. So my first paragraph will be purely quantitative, discussing all of investment appraisal. And then I'm going to discuss the paragraph, the other things that are in there, and then I'll bring in a final evaluation as well. Okay, now a few other things that you must remember about 12 markers is that for 12 marker you are given 2 marks for knowledge, 2 marks for application, 2 marks for analysis, and 6 marks are for evaluation. Okay, and how I usually answer a 12 marker is like this, that you split it into 3 paragraphs. The first one is a full combo of knowledge, application, analysis, and a bit of evaluation. So in this one, I'll talk about investment appraisal and all the things I've calculated. Then I move on to my second paragraph, and that's where again proper knowledge, application, analysis, evaluation. This is where I'll talk about them going capital intensive, because that's the big change that's occurring. So it's application, analysis, evaluation, similar to the first one. And then my third paragraph is fully evaluation. Okay, so things that you have to consider for evaluation, right? So I don't have a magic 8-ball that tells me write this, write this. I just go through a few checklists. Okay, and one thing is I've got to give a judgment, that is answer the question, should they do it, should they not do it. So a yes or a no must be given. Then always look at the objective. What are they trying to do? And since Pedro has a big objective of promoting people and developing them, as he was helped when he was a young man, I think that's something to consider here. But you will also have, again, in evaluation, any solutions that you can bring. Number 4, any obstacles that might appear later on. Number 5, any change in the external environment that you can think of or you can find. And one more thing, number 6 is impact on other departments. So bringing more machinery would mean you can sell more. You can produce more, which means operations will become more efficient. So, that's where I'm just going through this entire list and I'm thinking what applies to this answer, what can I include? And you don't have to have all 6. Even if you have half of these, you're okay. What if average investment isn't given? If it's not given, then you'll have to calculate it. And the formula for average investment is original cost plus residual value divided by 2. Okay, average investment is equal to original cost plus residual value divided by 2. Even if residual value is 0, you still take it as 0 and divide it by 2. That will give you average investment. Anyway, so this is my format for answering a 12-mark question. Okay, and now I'll do it for you. Just give me a second. Let me just set it up here. So this is the question I'm attempting, and let me just get a clean slate for me to type on. Is that fine? Okay. Hello. How are you? So I won't even try to say the name. Thank you. And yes, we have recently created our A2 course companion. If it's not there, we will make sure that it is there. Admin, could we make a note of that? We will make it available. Check in a couple of days, it'll be there. Right, let's begin. So obviously, this is an essay answered. You need to properly explain things. My first paragraph is going to be about the investment appraisal. So I'll probably start by setting it up that PPP would need to consider qualitative and quantitative factors before deciding to invest in the machine. Okay. Looking at the data provided in table 1.3, we were able to perform investment appraisal to decide that's good enough. Okay, don't worry about the English so much. So we were English. Okay, we were able to perform to decide payback period. Now you still have to score marks for knowledge, so don't go for definitions, but just throw a bit of explanation in your answer here and there. So payback period, and I'll just throw a little bit of knowledge here to gain those 2 marks, which tells you the time it takes to recover original investment is 3 years for this machine. Now with each technique you have to decide whether this is good or bad, and the way to decide payback period is that as long as it is under the useful life, you're good. So that's what I'm going to write here. Since the useful life is 4 years for the machine, as per payback period, you write the full form, okay? As per payback period, this would be a good investment. Okay. Additionally, ARR, again write the whole thing. ARR, which shows annual return on average investment, is 21%, right? Now how do you know ARR is good or bad? Well, you compare it either to any other investment opportunity that might be discussed in the case study. If that's not given, you compare it to the interest rate in the country. If that's not given, then you still question the fact that, well, we need to still compare this to something before deciding this is good or bad. Okay? And I'm going to write that. Remember, this is where I'm providing an obstacle. Look, I don't have that information, and that is also part evaluation, part analysis. So you're doing all of that in one. Okay, without data on interest rate or other investments, it's hard to decide. Okay, now we've discussed both of them, given our judgment, but now we get to the main point, which is that both of these ignore time value of money. And which technique then takes care of all of that? NPV. So I'm going to use that as my evaluation here. Let me just use a different color so that it's obvious. So the problem with these techniques is that they ignore the concept of time value of money. Therefore, before deciding PPP must calculate net present value using correct discount factors, as it is the most important calculation needed for decision. Okay, so a complete answer of investment appraisal, even if let's say they had asked you to calculate ARR and NPV, you will still say that we also need payback period. However, as long as NPV is positive for any investment, you go ahead with it. Okay, if NPV is positive, that means you will definitely have payback before the useful life. So it is a safe investment as long as NPV is positive, because it also considers time value of money. So that is your argument for evaluation. Okay, so that's the quantitative part of my answer there. Hopefully this is all making sense, and again, if there's any question, just type it up in the chat window and I'll be happy to answer it. Let's move on. Okay, and before I move on, let me just take you back to the case study. And when I say qualitative, right, qualitative is all of these points that we had highlighted when we were reading it earlier. So they were earlier labor intensive and batch production using quality assurance. Now they're getting computer controlled machines, so they're going to flow production. So I'll talk about that, which means they will become more efficient. They'll be able to make more pies. They're increasing their capacity, which means they can service the growing need in the market, which traditionally has been high. The problem with that is workers become less motivated. Then A, you're overpaying them. B, then you'll make them redundant, and that means trade union problems. Another thing to consider, which I will bring in the final evaluation, is that they want to develop young people, and this is going against that. So they're moving away from soft HRM to hard HRM. Also, the fact that the economy is slowing down, low income growth, high inflation. So if you spend now in this high output machine, then maybe it's not such a good idea. And in order to get it in, you will need to borrow, which means your gearing will go above 50%, and that's problematic. So all of those things are my final evaluation. But right now I want to discuss in qualitative that they're becoming capital intensive, higher efficiency, more output, but less motivation for workers. Okay, so where is my answer? Oh, it is. Hello, Mr. Akil. Same to you. Same to you. Love the penguin. Shall we name it Pingu? Okay, moving on. So, how should I start this? Introducing computer. Whoa, that's not how you spell computer. Computer controlled pie making machine would make the process flow production and more capital intensive, right? So we are identifying what concept is at play here, which is capital intensive and flow production. So that will get us marks for knowledge. Okay. Now, what does this mean? This will make production non-stop, and the company can guarantee consistent quality, right? This is what you write for capital intensive, that they can offer consistent quality as machines make very little mistakes, if any, right? In addition, the production capacity will also increase, which will bring, remember, production economies of scale, we can discuss that, which will bring production economies of scale. What else? More output, more efficient, better quality. Yeah, what I can, hold on, let me just pull this up here. Historically, demand has been growing, not towering, growing, and therefore it might be a good idea to increase output levels. However, it will also lead to making workers redundant, which may lead to further and we call this industrial action when the trade unions come after you. Further industrial action from trade unions increasing cost for PPP. Okay. Motivation level will also fall for the workers. Why? Because since machines are not replacing them, what happens is that their job security goes down, right? So motivation will fall for workers as their job security will fall. So remember, you need to have both positive, negative, all elements. This is a balanced argument of analysis. Now I'll bring in a couple of lines, if I can, of evaluation here. And I'll say that this goes against the objective of Pedro of developing the workforce and therefore will be challenging for the growth of business. Anything you go against, anytime you go against the objective, it's a problem. So I'm still waiting for my final paragraph of evaluation, but at the end of both, I still threw in a little bit of it. Okay. So I used as much. Remember, you don't have to discuss each and every point that you find in the case study. The examiner wants you to pick the most important ones. So I've tried to do that and just showed you that how you, for every 12-mark answer, which is linked to a calculation, you must have a quantitative part, you must have a qualitative part. And now I'm going to go and look into my final paragraph of evaluation, which I discussed here earlier. Remember, I'm going to give a judgment. Should they do it? Should they not do it? How does it impact the objective? We've kind of discussed the objective part already, right, in this last paragraph. So I can skip that. Maybe I can provide a solution, any obstacle, any impact. So this is what I'm going to do. And if I reflect upon what I've seen in the case study so far, the problem is that he was helped by someone when he was young and he's really keen on developing workforce and they are employing soft HRM. Machine is an indication of hard HRM. So I would probably say don't do it. Then I look at the fact that demand is starting to fall down. There's high inflation. Your exports are becoming more expensive. This is perhaps not the best time to be looking to expand. Another thing is that when motivation is down, there is no way the company moves forward and only works. So it goes backwards. And they've also been developing their new kind of pies. So maybe they should be focusing on that rather than going to find a faster way of making things that they already make. All right. So that's the final argument that I'm going to make here at the end of this. So let's begin. I'm gonna go with blue. Okay, why not? So this is my evaluation part. Okay, this is in blue. That is blue. Okay. So what should I talk about first? PPP should resist going against its objective of developing workers as it is their USB. Right? They do that, so that's good about them. The economic situation also suggests that demand for pies, especially premium pies, remember more expensive pies will be bought less in a time of high inflation, is expected to fall, and therefore without a guarantee of sales it might not be a good idea to buy the machine now. So I've talked about the social angle, I've talked about economy not doing well. Pedro has always practiced soft HRM, and buying the machine would signal introduction of hard HRM. So which is not good for employee morale. What else can I write? Yeah, obviously the last part where they said you may have to borrow. Most importantly, since buying the machine requires taking a bank loan, it will push the gearing ratio above the acceptable 50% target, which means obviously what does that mean? If it's higher than 50%, it means that you're going to have to use a lot of your profit to pay off the interest that you have to pay on the bank loan. So that's the problem that I'm highlighting here. Okay, which means that PPP will have to use more of its profit, profit to pay interest. Therefore, therefore, it actually, this is not a question where they're looking for a recommendation, they're just saying evaluate. Therefore, on balance, it's not the most. Actually, I'm not going to include this at all. Remember, the question is evaluate, don't recommend. If the question started with the word recommend, then I would include this line that don't do it. But evaluate means just from all angles show me what's happening here. So there you go, people. That's how you ensure that your 12 marks, at least 10, I would give myself a 10 here if you allow me to, at least 10 if not more. And that's all the types of questions that you might see in a paper 3. An 8 marker, if I could just quickly take you to it, this was our attempt at 8 marker where we looked at external influences. Then we did a couple of questions of calculation, and then we attempted this 12 marker. Remember, the process remains the same for all 12 markers, all 8 markers. Questions? Everybody okay? Anything else? Looks like we're all a happy bunch. So, I think we've come to the end of our session today. So, I hope this was useful, and share with any of your friends who are preparing for their paper threes. Maybe it will help them get some sawab. And I'll be back again next week, same time, with a session on how to attempt the paper four. Okay, so there's also the really good things on our platform. Go check them out, use them for your exams, and I'm sure they will help you improve your grades. So thank you for being here. I hope this was useful. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye bye. Allah Hafiz.